Om Jnanatimidandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurat Vishe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai. Okay, I'll admit Amritamantaji. Okay, so today we will be continuing on our discussion of the Vibhutis, which of course are culminating in our chapter of Vibhuti Yoga. As I said last week, I'm having a little bit less slides for this section just because I don't want to visually distract us too much. I think this is a really, really nice section to really visualize what we're reading. And we'll do a similar thing for the 11th chapter, although I'll explain that when we get to the 11th chapter. But yeah, but I did figure out last week, as I was uploading the recording, I thought it was a little bit dull, just seeing my face. I've just got one slide that I'll stay on. Yeah, okay, so I'll just share my screen and then we can continue going through those. Start from current slide. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Hey, okay, let's continue going then. As I said last week, and it's still on the slide now, isn't it? Yeah. As I said last week, we will go through each one relatively quickly because there are a lot of texts. So without further ado, let's begin. Does anyone remember which was the last shlok we reached last week?
Text 29, Prabhu, of 10th chapter.
Yep. Okay. So then let's go on to text 30. Let me just get my Gita out. Hopefully you've all got your Gitas out. Okay, so text 29. Again, I won't say the Sanskrit just because we've got so many texts to go through. But we'll just go through the English for here. But in your own time, please read it. Okay. Text 29, seeing as Katyayani Mataji nicely told us. Mataji, would you like to read out the English?
Yes, Prabhu. Text 29, translation. Of the many hooded Nagas, I am Ananta, and among the aquatics, I am the demigod Varuna. Of departed ancestors, I am Aryama, and among the dispensers of law, I am Yama, the Lord of Death. Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai. So here we find again, we find that Krishna, he's identifying among the Nagas with Shesha, right? I think this identification is pretty straightforward. Of course, Shesha, he is supporting all of the universes. What else is Anantadev doing? What is he doing with his many heads?
Seeing the glories of the Supreme Lord.
Yes, and I once heard from my spiritual master that Anantadev, he is speaking Srimad Bhagavatam Katha, right? But he's been speaking since when? Since the beginning before time, right? Since before there were beginnings, he has been speaking, but he hasn't finished the first word. He is still speaking the first word in his glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the
It's his Mangala Charan.
yeah. He's still going through the Mangala Charan, right? So this is the nature of Anantadev. And actually, Vrindavan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat, he glorifies the spiritual master. And he says that the spiritual master is the incarnation of Balaram, because Balaram is, of course, the source of Anantadev, right? Is, of course, the source of Shesh. And in each one of Anantadev's mouth is an infinite ocean of Hari Katha, right? Each one of these heads is speaking the glories of the Lord. And so the spiritual master is very much the incarnation of Balaram, the empowered incarnation of Balaram, because the spiritual master as well is carrying in their mouth infinite Hari Katha, right? So anyways, it's a nice little glorification I always enjoy from Chaitanya Bhagavat. Okay, we'll keep on going then. Text 30, maybe Śrikānta Sena Prabhu is disposed. Rohan Prabhu, would you like to say the English?
I could have done it.
Okay, you can do the next one then.
Text 30. Among the Daitya demons, I'm the devoted Prahlad. Among subduers, I am time. Among beasts, I'm the lion. And among birds, I'm Garuda.
Yeah. So here we have, thank you, Prabhu. Here we have the classic among the Daityas, right? I am Prahlad, right? Of course, many people like to take this one out of context. They like to blaspheme the Supreme Lord with it, but that is not the case here. So continuing on, we can have a description of text 31. Let's have Rohan Prabhu read it out.
Of purifiers I am the wind, of the wielders of weapons I am Rama, of fishes I am the shark, and of flowing rivers I am the Ganges.
Jai. Right? It's described in Shastra that in this Kali Yuga, there are two specific incarnations of the Lord, which are very mercifully present. Does anyone know what they are?
Is it one the holy name?
Oh, yes. So that's one way of doing it. That's the problem with asking these questions. It's like asking who's the greatest devotee. There's 5 different correct answers, right? That's one way of putting it, but that's not the two that I'm going for. This one is mentioned in relation to, I'm trying how to say it without spoiling it. It's described as Supreme Lord comes in 2 forms, one of water and one of wood.
People and
No, I don't think the Supreme Lord comes as people. As much as I like everyone that I see, then they're not as pleasing as Krishna.
Is it the Archa form, Prabhuji?
You're getting very close. This is what Mahaprabhu says. Again, this is another way that Mahaprabhu says the two. This is the one Śrikānta Sena Prabhu is referring to. Mahaprabhu, he tells his mother Sachimata, I will always incarnate in the form of the holy name and the murti. And Sachimata always incarnates as the tongue of the person chanting the holy name and the materials that have been used to make the murti. No, it's Jagannath in the form of wood, and it's the Ganga in the forms of water flowing. These are the manifestations of the Lord's mercy in Kali Yuga, right? So we see very nicely the Lord has identified with this. Of course, we hear the shark, the makara. The makara is just very special, right? And yeah, so we can keep on going then, I think. Let's go text 32, Rohan Prabhu. Oh, wait, did I already ask Rohan Prabhu? Okay, text 32, let's have Mrunal Mataji.
Of all creations, I am the beginning and the end, and also the middle. O Arjuna, of all sciences, I am the spiritual science of the self, and among logicians, I am the conclusive truth. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So this text is a little bit more, I don't want to say complex because all of them are very complex indeed, but it's a bit more, it's referring a bit more complex information. So we might think that now Krishna, he has begun to repeat himself, right? Krishna, he's begun to repeat what he's been discussing, right? Because what can anyone think of what this is maybe reminiscent of? if we think back right to the beginning of these glories, what was the first one? What is the first text where we started hearing about the vibhutis of the Lord? If you go back to text 20, if you read text 20, you might see. In text 20,
Super
Krishna,
soul.
he says he's a super soul, and he says, I'm the beginning, middle, and end of all beings, right? And now what is Krishna saying here? Of all creations, I'm the beginning and the end, and also the middle. So what should our conclusion be? Should our conclusion be that therefore Krishna, he has only a few limited vibhutis, so he has to repeat himself in order to fill up a list, right? No. Our acharyas, they say these are two distinct different things. In text 20, it's referring to all living beings, right? However, this is referring to the rest of creation, right? So we might remember that there are the two energies of the Lord in the material world. There's the superior and inferior. One is the jivas, and one is the dead matter, right? The first text, text 20, that is referring to the living beings. So the dead matter that is filled with living beings. This one is referring to tables and things like that, right? So this is a distinction that is made. And furthermore, what do we hear? Of all creations, I'm the beginning and the end and also the middle. Of all sciences, I'm the spiritual science of the self. Baladev Vidyabhushan, whose commentary is the main one, alongside Srila Prabhupada's that I'm following for this section. I think he writes a very sweet commentary for this section. He defines this spiritual science of the self as Vedanta, right? Vedanta quite literally means the conclusion of the Vedic knowledge, or the final part of the Vedic knowledge, right? And so he refers to it as being the delineation of this. And of course, we will hear in the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna's Vedavid, Vedanta Krid, right? Vedanta is very intimately associated with Krishna because it is Vedanta that ultimately gives the conclusive understanding of Krishna, right? We are Gauriya Vaishnavas, or at least I'd hope we are all trying to be Gauriya Vaishnavas. And Gauriya Vaishnavism is a school of Vedanta. Sometimes we think we're not, right? Sometimes people hear there is the yoga school and we think we are bhakti yogis, right? And therefore we are in the yoga school, not in the Vedanta school. But actually we'll find Srila Prabhupada, he is the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. But what many people don't know is that Srila Prabhupada actually started a few other missions while he was in India, right? There was the League of Devotees, is a very famous one. You'll read about in Lilamrita. A less famous one, and it's related to the point I'm making here, he founded with two disciples of his godbrother, but that was the godbrother he took sannyas from. So Srila Prabhupada, he took sannyas from Srila Bhakti Pragyana Keshava Goswami Maharaj, and two of Keshav Maharaj's disciples began the Gauriya Vedanta Samiti with Srila Prabhupada. You'll see they're the three co-founders of this mission. So there we find Gauriya Vedanta Samiti, right? It is the society for promulgating Gauriya Vedanta. So Vedanta is very essential, and we are, of course, Vedantists, right? I mentioned that past time to make that point clear. We are very, very much in the Vedanta tradition. Okay. So, and then lastly, among logicians, I am the conclusive truth. So this is referring to Nyaya, right? We might know, I was mentioning there's the Vedanta school. There's also the Nyaya school. And Nyaya, in it, there are various ways to reach a conclusion, right? There's Vitanda, there's Vada, and there's Jalpa, right? So Krishna here, he identifies as Vada, right? Vada is when we are trying to carry out debate, right? But we're trying to do so in order to actually reach the conclusion. We're not trying to just win for the sake of winning, right? I always wonder this, whenever you see debates on TV, sometimes you'll see that one person, he's completely defeated the other person in the debate, right? Or you'll see on YouTube or whatever, right? Whenever you're procrastinating instead of doing your open book assignment, right? Whatever you're watching, right? You'll see these debates and you'll see that clearly one person has won, right? The other person has completely been smashed, right? But they still won't accept that they were wrong. They still won't accept that their side was incorrect. Why is this? Because they're not engaging in Vada, right? They're not engaging in discourse in order to come to a genuine sattvic conclusion, right? So then, and then you obviously have the other types. You have vitanda, which is just fighting in order to win, which is the majority that we see. And jalpa is when you're straight up lying, right? So vitanda, you're not, vitanda, you can say is in the mode of passion, right? Argument in the mode of passion. I want to beat this person, right? I want to beat this person. I just want to win, right? But jalpa is completely just fake news, right? You're just making things up, right? You're just lie after lie after lie, and that's probably the level of discourse we have today, right? Actually, these days you don't end up ever evaluating anyone's ideas. You have to figure out who's lying the least, and then you think, okay, maybe this is the side I can trust, right? This is how public discourse has become, right? You spend most of your time fact checking what has been said, right? So that's why Kali Yuga, right? Complete mode of ignorance. That's just complete. That's not even productive, right? At least when you're trying to beat the other side, there is some sort of display and skill. With this, you're just making things up, right? So these are the three forms. And Krishna, he says, I'm not too fond of the other two. Obviously, we all know. When you see Vada happening, it's a very glorious thing, right? It's actually very nice. Sometimes when you see somebody, I think one of the most glorious things you can see when you see people debating is when the person says, oh, okay, I was wrong. I've changed my mind, right? This is something that we all can see. People are very embarrassed to do it, but actually that's the most glorious thing, right? When you see somebody do that, you respect them much more. In fact, sometimes you respect them more than the person who won the debate, right? So therefore, Krishna identifies with Vada, right? Very, very glorious. Okay, then let's go on to text number 33. Let's have Visakha Mataji has just arrived. So Visakha Mataji, unless I'm putting you on the spot and you haven't gotten ready yet, if you could read text 33.
Yeah, sorry I was late.
No, that's all right.
Sorry, the Sanskrit or the...
No, the English. You can say the Sanskrit if you want.
I can try.
Yeah, go ahead.
Aksharanam akarosmi dvandva samas yasya cha cham aham eva sayakano tataham vishvatto mukha. Translation. Of letters, I am the letter A, and among compound words, I am the dual compound. I am also inexhaustible time, and of creators, I am Brahma.
Jai, thank you. So we find here, Krishna, he is identified with the little letter A. The reason for this is because A is present in all letters. You'll find the A sound. It's also the primordial sound, right? When we think of letters, actually, if you study linguistics, which if you want to be an interesting person, I recommend you don't. But if you study linguistics, you'll find that the way we measure and define sounds is how you are adjusting the flow of air in your mouth, right? So all of them are described in relation to how they're obstructing the flow of air. When you don't obstruct the flow of air at all, it's ah, right? There's zero obstruction in your mouth. Ka, your tongue is stopping the flow of air in the back, right? Ba, your lips are stopping the flow of air. Even the other vowels, E, if you feel in your mouth, your tongue is moving in order to stop the flow of the ah sound. E, and then ooh, you're moving your lips, right? I'm sure I've made the point. Right. So because of this, ah is the primordial sound, right? From this sound, all the other letters are created. And therefore, Krishna he identifies as ah, right? Among compounds, I am the dual compound known as Dvandva. Alex Prabhu is here, and I'm sure Alex Prabhu and I, we first met at a Sanskrit class at university. And I hope hearing about the Dvandva compound doesn't bring back the trauma of having to memorize all the forms of compounds. But there's a lot of compounds in Sanskrit, and Dvandva is a very specific one, right? There's Bahuvrihi, Tatpurush, like this. There's all these different ways you can put two words together. Dvandva is unique because it gives equal weight to the two words. That's how you learn about the compounds. So each compound will put so for example, Bahuvrihi literally means much rice, right? A lot of rice. But it means the person who has a lot of rice. So the emphasis in the Bahuvrihi is on neither of the two words. Again, you can go on and on. Other compounds will put emphasis on the first word. Others will put emphasis on the second word. The Tatpurush, the Dvandva puts equal emphasis on the both. And because it has equal weighting on both words, and equal weighting that's put emphasis on those words, therefore Krishna, he has emphasized that, right? Both have equal importance, therefore it is the one which has the most heaviest level of meaning. Okay. And then finally, among destroyers, what? Krishna, he is time, right? Time is the ultimate destroyer. Who can outlive the destruction of time, right? I think that's very self-evident. In 100,000 years, no one will remember anything. We know there's a famous pastime in in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Where Revata, is it Revata or is it Revati? No, it's Revata, right? He goes and he visits Brahma. And after visiting Brahma, he goes back home, back onto the Earth planet, and he sees that no one even remembers his name. None of his descendants live anymore. His whole dynasty has been destroyed, right? The whole world is completely different, right? Time is the all-consuming fire. And as we get into 11th chapter, we'll hear that. The very, very famous Kalosmi Lokakshaya Krit Pravriddha. Okay, and then lastly, I am of creators, I am Brahma. So this is opposite. If everyone has been destroyed by time, everyone has been created by Brahma, right? So Krishna, he is talking about creation and destruction. If everyone's creation can be rooted, if everyone's destruction can be rooted in time, so too everyone's creation is rooted in Brahma. And so Krishna, he is saying, of the creators, I'm the creator of all. And of the destroyers, I am the destroyer of all. Okay, text 34. Let's have Save Amrita Mataji. You're here. And just 1 second, I'll just need to quickly. Yeah, please go ahead, Mataji.
Sure. I'm all devouring death, and I'm the generating principle of all that is yet to be. Among women, I'm fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience.
Jai. So here is the text that I was talking about every time we get one of the texts, which seems a little bit problematic. Whenever we find descriptions of women being less intelligent and, you know, et cetera, I'm sure all of those sort of texts stand out to us. We should remember not to dismiss those texts. As I said when we were discussing them, they are making valid and valuable points, but we should take them within context of the Bhagavad-gītā as it is, as Srila Prabhupada has translated it. Some of our acharyas do say that this just refers to demigods, right? And that is a way of reading it, right? But Srila Prabhupada has not said among demigods, right? Among female demigods or so and so. He said among women. He has clearly given this as referring to feminine qualities, right? So we have to think that the same Prabhupada who said those things also said this thing, right? So we have to think of a way where we read, where we don't delegitimize either reading. As we've already discussed at length, I think we found ways to not delegitimize either reading, but I kept on saying later on we'll hear where Krishna gives intelligence as a feminine quality, right? And so here we find that being listed. So these are also vibhutis. So when we see these things, we should realize that they are pointing towards Krishna, and that's one thing I think. Not referring to any on this list, but whenever, again, the principle of this chapter is whenever we see anything wonderful, it should remind us of Krishna. Srila Bhakti-śāstrī Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he made this point once. He was speaking about the qualities of sannyas, of brahmacharya, right, of celibacy. And they were talking about, you know, somebody asked a question along the lines of, surely, you know, you find all women ugly or something like that, right? Women are nothing to you, right? Maybe not even that they're ugly, but you don't notice the beauty of women. And Bhakti-śāstrī Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he said, yes, I notice the beauty of all women. And I think how beautiful is this devotee of Krishna, right? How beautiful, or rather, I see this beauty, and I think this beauty, it belongs to Krishna. How beautiful is Krishna that this beauty belongs to him, right? This is the fullness, right, of understanding Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti Yoga, the yoga, again, of connecting to these opulences, is one ultimately of healthily engaging with the world. It is not, again, as many dry impersonalists and speculators will try to render spiritual life. I see all these wonderful things, but I want to transcend them because they're all hideous, right? No, it's instead, it's saying this is beautiful. How much more beautiful is Krishna? This is what is being demonstrated here. This is why sometimes, you know, when devotees will become a little bit disconnected from the world, right? Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, he said apparently in the early days of Krishna consciousness, if you went on japa walks, people would say you're in Maya. And then Srila Prabhupada started going on japa walks and they couldn't say that anymore, right? But it was like this, right? There was a strong fanaticism. And with that fanaticism, we'll misunderstand the way we're meant to relate to the world. We're not meant to hate the world. We're not meant to not enjoy the world, right? That's why His Holiness Bhakti-Vikash Maharaj. And if you want to see anyone who's strict in their Krishna consciousness, you won't find anyone stricter than His Holiness Bhakti-Vikash Maharaj. Once while he was traveling, I heard from one of his disciples, they booked a 5-star hotel, right? And in the 5-star hotel, he had to, he always instructs for not to be booked in those hotels, but because there was none others available, he had to be there. And even though he was there in this 5-star hotel, he slept on the floor, and I think he let his servant sleep in the bed or something, right? So this is the renunciation of Bhakti-Vikash Maharaj, right? But he always says, we condemn materialistic pleasure. We do not, or materialistic beauty or materialistic enjoyment. We do not condemn material enjoyment, right? Materialistic enjoyment is when we are seeking sense gratification from the material world. But he gives the example, if I'm walking in a beautiful forest and I'm chanting my rounds and it aids me in my meditation on the holy names, this is material enjoyment, but it is fine, right? We are not rejecting the material world. We are enjoying it in relationship to Krishna, right? And therefore, to a degree, we are very connected to the world. And many times I see devotees become very attracted, especially to indigenous spiritualities. You'll see lots of devotees, they talk about like Native American spirituality or indigenous Australian spirituality, because it's very connected to the world, right? And I think they're very attracted for very good reason, right? Because often in Krishna conscious circles, we forget how connected we are to the world, right? But again, Krishna has spoken this whole 10th chapter to make this point, right? That our spirituality should be connected to the world, but we should go one step further and connect our connection to this world to the spiritual world, right? Okay, so that's my little side note, but this is the significance of what we're discussing here. This world around us is filled with so much beauty, so much splendor. Let it always remind us of Krishna. Let us not close our eyes to it and live in some sort of self-inflicted austerity. Okay. Then let us have, let's go into the next one. I was going to define how each one of these words is understood, but each one of our acharyas understand it differently, and we're already half an hour in, and I want to start the 11th chapter today. I'll send in the WhatsApp group, I'll send how Baladev Vidyabhushan and how Srila Prabhupada render each one of these texts, each one of these words. What does intelligence mean? What does steadfastness mean? I'll send that in the WhatsApp group because you can read it yourself. Okay, text 35. Let's have Mrugank Prabhu. Would you be happy to read?
Yeah, let me just get it up. I was just listening.
Yeah, no problem. If you want, I can come back to you for 36. I can have someone else say 35.
No, if you give me 10 seconds, I'm here.
10 seconds. We'll be finishing the whole course months late because of Mrugank's Prabhu's 10 seconds.
Mrihat samadata samnam gayatri chandasamaham masana margashirshos. Oh my God. Masana margashirshoham rituna kusumakaraha. Of the hymns in the Samaveda, I am Brihat Sama, and of poetry, I am the Gayatri. Of months, I am Margashirsha, November to December, and of seasons, I am the flower-bearing spring.
Jai, Jai. Thank you. So now we'll find again, Krishna, he's very repetitive, isn't he? Right? Because we've already heard about the Samaveda, haven't we? What is Krishna in relationship to the Vedas? Of Vedas, which one is he? He's a Samaveda, right? And so he seems to be very repetitive here, doesn't he? Or is he saying something else? Often people, they'll read quickly and they'll think he's saying again, of the Samaveda, of the Vedas, I'm the Samaveda. But actually, He's saying of the Sama Veda, I am the Brihat Sama, right? So of the songs, of the hymns of the Sama Veda, I am this one in particular, right? Sometimes it's called the sometimes it's referred to with its initial words. Tvam idhi hava mahe, right? I don't know if any of you saw I sent in the WhatsApp group, you can hear a recitation of the Sama Veda. If you listen to it, it's very, very melodious. It's very unique. In that recording, by the way, they don't start reciting the Sama Veda until like 5 minutes in. That's when you'll really hear it. At the beginning, it sounds like regular Vedic recitation. But if you skip to like 10 minutes in or so, or you can just watch the first 10 minutes, it's very auspicious to hear the Vedas being recited. You can hear the beautiful melodies of the Sama Veda, right? But this one, in particular, this one is done at the end of many ceremonies of many yagyas. That's its specific purpose. You often hear this one being recited in those moments. And it praises Indra for having very great and special power and opulence, right? And as we know, among demigods, Krishna is Indra, right? Of course, as we've already discussed, that doesn't mean Indra is an incarnation of Krishna, right? Indra is a jiva, a spirit soul, like you and me. Okay, so then Krishna, he says, of poetry, I am the Gayatri, right? And again, just quick clarification. I think I've done this before in the class, but just clarifying again, the Gayatri is not one mantra. People think, oh, there is the Gayatri mantra, like Om Bhur Bhuvasva, right? I won't say the rest because I don't want to initiate all of you, right? So people think this is the Gayatri, but actually Gayatri refers to a type of mantra. There are many Gayatri mantras. Gayatri is just a meter, right? It's one form of the poetry. It's a poetic meter. There's the Kama Gayatri, there's a Guru Gayatri, there's all these different Gayatri mantras. The famous one that we hear about, or maybe we have heard, is the Brahma Gayatri. Actually, interestingly enough, Tamal Krishna Goswami, he would say it openly in classes. You'll hear him, he'll recite it in classes. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, he'd say, because in one purport, Srila Prabhupada actually writes out the whole Brahma Gayatri. And he says, because Srila Prabhupada has written it, therefore there's no issue in saying it out loud. We find the same thing with the Kama Gayatri. The Kama Gayatri is just a verse from the Brahma Samhita. So many people, when they recite the whole Brahma Samhita, they recite that Gayatri. So I guess we can infer from that it's not technically the case that just by reciting it out loud, we would be initiating everyone. But I still tend to follow it just out of fear. Yes, smartas in shambles, as Śrikānta Sena Prabhu has said. Yeah, so we see this. It seems to be that at the very least you can read it. Okay, so Gayatri is a type of meter. And then Krishna, he identifies with the Margashirish month, right? And why is this month the one who Krishna is identified with? Because this is the one where new grains are arising. This is the one where we find the crops are coming forth. This is the one where the farmers rejoice, right? Because the crops have come out. And when the crops come out, all of society is maintained. Grain is the heart of any valid society, right? Because without grains, no one can eat. And if no one can eat, then nothing can happen, right? And then Krishna identifies with spring, which is the best of all seasons. Why? I'm sure we can all relate to this because it's not too hot and it's not too cold, right? It's just perfectly gentle. Baladev Vidyabhushan, he also says it has very many festivals within it. That's a very sweet reason. And even sweeter is he says the flowers are the most fragrant during this season. And therefore Krishna identifies with this. So again, we can think with this chapter, very practical. Whenever we smell a beautiful flower, we can think, Krishna is the spring season, because that is the season which brings forth the fragrance of the flowers the most nicely. Whenever we eat grains, we can think, Krishna, he is the spring, he is the Margashirish season, right? Where all of these grains have been cultivated, right? So we can think like this. We can connect everything to Krishna, and therefore we can rejoice in the world. Okay, then let's go to text 36. Let's have Vidhi Mataji.
Prabhu, you want me to recite the Sanskrit also?
you feel free to recite the Sanskrit if you will, but I only need the English. But if you want to recite the Sanskrit, please do. I won't complain.
No, I'll go with the English then. I'm also the gambling of cheats, and of the splendid, I'm the splendor. I am victory, I'm adventure, I'm the strength of the strong.
Jai. So, Krishna here, he identifies with gambling with gambling, right? This is another fun one, right? But Baladev Vidyabhushan, he says that the reason why this is done, why he is the gambling of cheats, is because gambling is the means. He says gambling is referring to dice here, right? So this is the one by which people lose everything, right? So Krishna says of all forms of cheating, this is the form of cheating by which everything is lost. Therefore, the cheating is destroyed, right? So because everything is lost in gambling, therefore it is the most destructive form of cheating. And because it's a more destructive form of cheating, therefore it is the greatest form of cheating. And therefore, we find that Krishna identifies with gambling, right? Also, I like to think of gambling as the forms of cheating, because it's the one where you can almost say the crime is done by the dice, not by the individuals. That's at least my personal reflection. But yeah. So we find in this Krishna is identified. And this is making a very, very invaluable point. Why? Because I was saying before, all things can be connected to Krishna. All things we can find the opulence of Krishna in, right? It is not just in the apparently positive things, right? Everything is manifesting the opulence of Krishna's majesty, right? As much as we find Krishna's majesty in creation, we also find it in destruction, right? The raw majesty of this world is a manifestation of Krishna's opulence. Okay. And then, of course, I think the other ones are pretty obvious. Of the splendid, I am the splendor. I am victory, I'm adventure, and I'm the strength of the strong. Okay, then text 37. Let us hear from Varun Prabhu.
Text 36, was it?
No, text 37.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep. Of the descendants of Vrishni, I am Vasudeva, and of the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. Of the sages, I am Vyasa, and among great thinkers, I am Visakha.
Jai. So here we find Vasudeva is being listed as the descendant of Vrishni. Who can tell me who is Vasudeva?
Anakadundubi.
Yeah, that's yeah. Who else can we list? Who can we list as Vasudeva?
One of the Chaturvyuha.
Yes, yes. Who else can we list as Vasudeva? There's a lot of people we can list as Vasudeva. I'm waiting to see how many we can all come up with.
Son of Vasudeva.
Yes, son of Vasudeva, and there's two sons of Vasudeva. So we've expanded it to two, right? There is Krishna, and there is Balaram, right? So we find all of these different definitions of Vasudeva. Generally, our acharyas give Vasudeva as being Balaram here. Srila Prabhupada, however, lists Krishna as Vasudeva, right? So we find both options are valid. Generally, Balaram is listed because it wouldn't make sense for Krishna. Krishna, this whole time, he's referring to expansions of himself, right? But yeah. And then among Pandavas, we find Krishna identifies as Arjuna. Why Arjuna? Because Arjuna is the only one who is able to be an avatar, right? The other ones are not avatars, but Arjuna does when there is the Narayana form, right? Narayana, as we may know, is an incarnation of the Lord, and it's a mixed incarnation, right? Nara is a Shakti Avesh avatar, is a human, is a regular jiva, and Narayan is, of course, Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because Arjuna is the Nara aspect of Narayan, we can consider Arjuna to be very special among the Pandavas. And therefore, Arjuna is specified. Lastly, then we have Vyasadeva, who is, as we know, he is the master of all of the he is the master of all of the Vedic literatures, and he also is an avatar, right? So this section here is referring to expansions, really. And then lastly, there is Shukra or Ushana, who is the teacher of the Asuras, and to my knowledge is the only one here who is not an incarnation of the Lord. Okay, now let's go to text 38. Let's have Tarun Prabhu maybe can tell us text 38.
Among all means of suppressing lawlessness, I am punishment. And of those who seek victory, I am morality. Of secret things, I am silence. And of the wise, I am the wisdom.
Jai, right? So I think this one's relatively straightforward. Among those who punish, I'm the punishment itself, right? Among those who seek victory, I'm morality. And among all great secrets, I am silence. Yeah, I think this one is pretty straightforward. There's nothing in particular to point out here. This one's actually my favorite one. Almost you can't put into words. I just think it's very profound, right? Of secret things, I'm silence, right? We can really think of the depths of Krishna's opulence, right? To think just of silence as a secret, right? It is nothing is more secret than silence itself, right? I always found that this one, when I was first reading the Bhagavad-gītā, this is the one that stuck out to me the most. This is the one that really captured my imagination. I thought, really, what is the position of Krishna, right? Okay, then let's go into text 39. Maybe Shavina Mataji can say text 39.
Yes, Prabhuji. Furthermore, O Arjuna, I am the generating seeds of all existences. There is no being, moving or non-moving, that can exist without me. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai, and this is the final one, right? This is the final thing that we hear. And this one, actually, in one sense, isn't even a metaphor. This one is just directly true, right? So Krishna, he's now transitioning into a direct description of his glories, because what is this whole thing illustrating? This whole latter half of this 10th chapter is an elaboration of Aham Sarvasya Prabhavu, right? I am the source of all things, right? All things are emanating from me, right? So because this whole chapter this whole second half has just been elaborating on this point, Krishna now he's coming and he's restating this point, right? I am the generating seed of all existences. Anything of all things that you see, the greatest of them, that is a representative of me. So here, Krishna, he is restating this point as he's concluding his list of all things. And then I think let us hear. So ultimately, just to make the point again, we began with the highest thing, right? He is the Paramatma, he's the super soul, he's present everywhere. And now we are concluding with the highest thing. How do we see Krishna everywhere? We see that all things are coming from him. How splendorous is Krishna's creation, right? His manifestation. Okay, then maybe Mrunal Mataji, would you be able to say text 40?
Yes, Prabhuji, 1 second. O mighty conqueror of enemies, there is no end to my divine manifestations. What I have spoken to you is but a mere indication of my infinite opulences. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai. Okay, and then let's go straight on to text 41. Maybe Divyansh Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor.
Jai. So this one is a very famous text. Is this on your memory? This should be on your memory list, no? Please add it to your memory list. I won't mark you for it, but just for your own personal sadhana. This is such a valuable text, right? Yad vibhuti mat sattvam shrimad urjitameva va tatta deva vagacha tvam mama tej sambhavam, right? This text is so very significant. Of course, Krishna, he says, but by a spark of my splendor, right? What is that spark of his splendor? It's the Paramatma, right? Just the Paramatma, which is what? A fraction of a fraction of a fraction of Krishna's potency and ability. All of this has been created, right? The Paramatma is manifesting all of these things. And what is a Paramatma? Just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. How glorious then is Krishna, right? If all of these things, His Grace Nrsimha Kavachya Prabhu, he was telling me, he was flying or something and he saw the bushfire damage from the plane, right? And he saw just how majestic it was, right? How much raw power there was. Obviously horrific power, but still it's this horrific opulence, right? In the same way that Krishna being time being the destroyer of all things is a very horrific opulence, but it's still an opulence. And he was sharing with me how this is the opulence on one continent, right? Of one planet, of one universe, right? Of these many infinite universes, all of which are coming from simply a fraction of Krishna's opulence, right? We can think of how majestic those bushfires were, and we can think of just how they are a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of Krishna's opulences, right? Therefore we find in Krishna's pastimes, right? A little bit before this, actually, a little bit before the Kurukshetra war, once there was, and I won't say the whole pastime in length, but there was once a Brahmin, right? And all of his children, they would die, right? All of them, they would be stolen away, right? And he was very, very dejected. And so he came to complain, and he said, what is this terrible, terrible king? These pointless kshatriyas, they're running around doing this and that, right? But they can't even defend the Brahmins, right? The Brahmins are left undefended here, right? How can we say that there's surely all of the kshatriyas are simply impotent fools, right? They are just running around adventuring and they're not doing their duty. And Arjuna, hearing this, Arjuna became very dejected, right? And so Arjuna, he became very depressed, and he thought, how can I let this be the case, right? How can I let somebody say these things about the kshatriyas and have a valid point behind them? So he came up to the Brahmin, and of course I'm summarizing the pastime, it goes on with lots of detail. And he goes up to the Brahmin and he tells him, I will make a vow. If I do not protect you and your offspring, then I will jump into the deepest flame and I will give up my life. Like this, Arjuna makes a vow. And so he makes this vow. And what happens is he begins to prepare to defend his child. Of course, he prays to Shiva, right? To empower him. And often people wonder why he prays to Shiva, but he prays to Shiva because for multiple reasons. One, yogamaya has made him convinced that Krishna is his friend, right? So he's thinking, oh, Krishna, normally we pray to him for protection, but he hasn't really been helping out. So I'll pray to Shiva this time to get better odds, right? He also prays to Shiva because Shiva is his guru, his spiritual master in terms of military points. So like this, he prays. Anyways, so what he does is he fires all his arrows and he creates a shield, a protective fortress around the Brahmin's wife, in order to make sure that no one can access the baby. But when the baby is around to go, it vanishes, right? Like this. So no one knows what's going on. Anyways, it's a long pastime. They go around searching around everywhere. Arjuna, he tries to find them. He doesn't find them. He becomes very dejected. And then as he's about to give up the ghost, as they say, as he's about to jump into the flame, Krishna, he tells him, oh no, actually Mahavishnu, he has him, right? So like this, they find out that Vishnu has stolen all of these children, right? And so they travel out to the edge of the universe. They travel out. I can't imagine how frustrated Arjuna would have been when Krishna told him, because he would be thinking, I was just about to kill myself. He couldn't have told me a little bit earlier. But anyways, Krishna decided to leave the information till the end. And then of course, what happens is that Krishna he takes his chariot and they go through all the layers of the universe. I know I promised to mention no more Vedic cosmology, but he goes out and he goes to the very edge of Loka. Does anyone know what Loka is? Loka is the mountain range that surrounds our universe, and it's the furthest light will go. So past Loka mountain, there is no light. Loka mountain stops all of the sunlight. So crossing across there, and they couldn't see anything, right? It was completely dark, definitionally. So Krishna, he takes his Sudarshan chakra and he pierces through all the layers of the material universe, and all of the light of the impersonal Brahman effulgence comes through, and it illuminates everything, and it's complete, and it's brighter than anything else. Anyway, so eventually they reach Vishnu, right? And they see him, and they see there he has the children. And what does Vishnu say? Why did he kidnap the children? There's a famous pastime. Who can tell me? What's the punchline of the pastime? Why did he kidnap all the children?
Just to take the darshan of Lord Krishna.
Exactly. He just wanted to see Krishna and Arjuna. And it's described actually that Vishnu is smiling when he sees Krishna and Arjuna, right? And the reason why is because, again, Arjuna, he's very much in the mood of this is my friend Krishna, right? So why is he smiling? Because after describing, after saying, I just want to have the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotee Arjuna, after saying this, he is smiling, A, because he's happy that he's had the darshan of the Lord. But B, he's smiling because he's thinking Arjuna is going to be so confused when he gets home. Arjuna seeing this will be so confused. What's going on, right? Vishnu, he is doing all of this just to have what is this? What is it? So Vishnu, he's smiling at how confused Arjuna will be. He's having a little bit of a laugh, right? But what do we understand from this? What are the glories of the Supreme Lord, right? What are the glories of his beauty? That Vishnu himself is willing to steal the children of a Brahmin, right? In order to have darshan of the Supreme Lord, right? What then to speak of the opulences in this world? But again, what should our approach be? When we see the opulences of this world, we should not reply with, oh, this is Maya, oh, this I hated. Our response to seeing the opulence of this world is, wow, how great is Krishna, right? This is such a tiny fraction of his opulence. Okay, then let's go to text 42, and then, and then we'll have our break. So, oh yeah, I didn't say anyone's name. In my head, I said Jaswant Prabhu. I didn't say that. Like, Jaswant Prabhu, would you be able to say the text for 42?
Yes, Prabhu. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe.
So there we see, right? There we see. He's elaborating on this point. Just with a single fragment of myself, just with a single fragment of this super soul, I'm supporting all that exists. You don't need to know all of these detailed things. Just understand aham sarvasya prabhavo, right? Just understand how everything is situated within me just by my expansion, right? Just understand this and you'll be set, right? So we can discuss all of these things, but understand this principle and you are fine, right? And we should think about this, right? When we are walking on the floor, on the earth, right? We feel supported, we feel safe, we feel secure, right? That is the ground upon which we stand. But the ground upon which existence itself stands is Krishna. We should think how amazing that is. Every single moment that exists situated in Krishna's hand, right? Time itself exists situated and supported by Krishna. Everything, existence itself exists only because Krishna allows it to, right? What an opulence that is, right? So every single moment, even if we don't see any of these other things to remind us of Krishna, we can think everything around me is all just the energy of Krishna manifesting. How glorious is Krishna? And therefore, what need is there for all this detailed knowledge? Okay, on that note, I think we'll have our 5-minute break. I'll see you all at 11:01. Yeah. Hare Krishna. I'm just assuming there's no real questions. I feel like the section that we've discussed doesn't really bring up too many questions. Like it's pretty straightforward. But are there any questions, even about the open book assignment? Just because I had a few people ask some things. If not, we'll go ahead. Okay, let's go ahead then and continue our discussion of the Bhagavad-gītā. Okay, share my screen. Okay, so here we go. So we're starting the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. Hope you all have your Gitas out. As always, we'll do a general overview of the chapter before diving into it. So this chapter is, again, as one of the Sanskrit names. I'm pretty sure most commentators give it this name, Vishwarup Darshan yoga reflects, this chapter is about the Vishwarup, right? Which very literally is, Vishwa means the world, right? That's why sometimes people call Srila Prabhupada Vishvacharya, right? Acharya of the whole world, right? So Vishwarupa, darshan, yoga, right? So the yoga of having darshan of the universal form. And it's broken down into, I would say, two halves, really. Firstly, we have the actual witnessing of the universal form, and that's 1 to 34, right? So in the first 4 texts, Arjuna asks to see the universal form. And then in texts 5 to 34, we hear about the universal form. But what's interesting is everyone sort of thinks, I guess when you read through quickly, you just sort of think it's being described in one go. But actually, you find 3 layers of description. Firstly, you find Krishna will describe the universal form. Krishna says how it looks like, right? And what it is. Then Sanjaya describes it, right? And Sanjaya gives lots of poetic descriptions, right? Like countless blazing suns in the sky. And I always find it interesting how visual his descriptions are. Is not to be mean, but Dhritarashtra is blind. Like I don't think he really understands a lot of the analogies. But that's just something I've always wondered about. I'm wondering what's going through Dhritarashtra's head when he hears Sanjaya's explanations. But yeah, what to do? At least we get to benefit because we know what a sun looks like. But yeah, something I've always wondered. Yeah. So yeah, so Sanjaya then he describes the universal form to Dhritarashtra, and then Arjuna then he begins to discuss about the universal form in text 15 to 30 and 31 to 34. I've listed them separately there, but they really build up of witnessing that universal form, right? They act as a trigger to certain questions and realizations that Arjuna has, right? And then after that, then Arjuna prays glorifications of the Supreme Lord. He says, please stop this. I don't want to see this universal form. And then Krishna then describes the means by which one can perceive the Lord, right? So pretty straightforward, I think. As the same as the last half of the last chapter, the first half of this chapter is going to be a little slide light, especially because as visual as the second half of the last chapter was, this one is even more visual. So I'm just going to have a few photos of the universal form, but I'm not going to do anything else because I want us to really visualize it. We really should meditate on these lengthy descriptions. Yeah. So far so good. Okay, let's keep on going then. Firstly, long quote. Who should I volunteer to read it? I'm going to volunteer Uma Devi Mataji to read out this quote.
Was one Prabhu? Oh, this one, Prabhuji. Okay.
Yeah, the one on the slide.
Screen. Yeah. Okay. In summary, the universal form of Krishna, which is a temporary manifestation, and the form of time, which devours everything, and even the form of Vishnu, four-handed, have all been exhibited by Krishna. Thus, Krishna is the origin of all these manifestations. It is not that Krishna is a manifestation of the original Vishwarupa or Vishnu. Krishna is the original origin of all forms. There are hundreds and thousands of Vishnus. But for a devotee, no form of Krishna is important but the original form, two-handed Shyamasundara. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated thus: those who are attached to the Shyamasundara form of Krishna in love and devotion can see him always within the heart and cannot see anything else. One should understand, therefore, that the purport of this 11th chapter is that the form of Krishna is essential and supreme. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
So we want to take away a very specific lesson before we begin studying the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter is very exciting. I think everyone, I know whenever my friends read the Bhagavad-gītā for the first time, right? They'll always say, like at university and all, they'll always say, wow, that 11th chapter, wow, really, really amazing, right? All these wonderful descriptions and everything. What is Srila Prabhupada saying here? Srila Prabhupada is saying the devotee is not too concerned, not too bothered with this universal form, right? And Arjuna isn't either. Often people understand Arjuna saying, stop showing me this form, as Arjuna being overwhelmed by, oh, this is too much for me to understand. But actually it's the opposite. Arjuna is overwhelmed by not being able to see, by not being able to directly appreciate the two-armed form of the Lord. He wants to experience the sweetness of the Lord. This is why Arjuna doesn't want to see this anymore, right? So it's not the case that this chapter here is demonstrating, as others have said, that this is the supreme form of the Lord. The universal form is a lesser form of the Lord. Elsewhere, we'll find in Prabhupada's purport, Prabhupada says the universal form is temporary. It's not an eternal form, right? So forget about not being the supreme form of the Lord. It's not even an eternal form. It's a temporary one. Why? Because it's composed of the material universe, right? And the material universe is temporary, right? So because of this, the universal form is not that big of a deal. Why is it being put there? A few reasons. One is that it still does demonstrate what we've heard in chapter 10. It demonstrates how the Lord is pervading all existence, how all opulences are related to him, etc., etc. So we've got that aspect. Secondly, it's done for the people who are not on that platform in order for them to experience faith, right? In order for them to experience a form that they can relate to, something that can inspire faith. And lastly, it can also be done as a way of meditating on the world, right? But Arjuna has asked this more, again, for the benefit of others than for the benefit of himself. He will ask at the beginning, he will ask Krishna, show me this form, right? But he asks so for the benefit of others and with a desire that's been planted in his heart by Krishna. But actually, he doesn't have this strong desire to see this form. He only has desire to see the Sham Sundara form. Okay. So, without further ado, let's begin then our reading of the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. As always, we'll go back to the standard. I will read out the shlokas, and then I'll choose somebody to read out the translation. Okay. We'll have Śrikānta Sena Prabhu read out the first translation. Arjuna uvacha madanugrahaya paramam guhyam adhyatma sangitam yatvat yoktam vachastena mohoyam vigato mama.
Arjuna said, by my hearing the instructions you have kindly given me about these most confidential spiritual subjects, my illusion has now been dispelled.
Jai, right? So again, Krishna, he has repeated his, can you still see the slide on the screen? Okay, I accidentally closed everything, but thankfully the slide is still there. Krishna, Arjuna has already said, right? I've been completely established, right, in the truth. My delusion is gone. We've already discussed this, right? So everything that he's doing now, he's doing for the benefit of others, right? But what do we find, right? He is described as anugrahaya, right? So he has received the fondness of the Supreme Lord, right? Mat anugrahaya, right? This is anugrahaya, sorry. Mat anugrahaya, right? This is what the Lord has done all of this. Why? Because the Lord is affectionate, right? On the other hand, what is the Lord revealed to him? He has revealed to him that he is Paramatma, right? So Arjuna, he is feeling a little bit overwhelmed, right? Some people feel that he's overwhelmed after seeing the form, but he's already feeling overwhelmed, right? He's feeling that he's feeling now already that feeling that we'll hear later on very famously. Oh, how did I deal so friendlily with you? Already this is starting to be there. And how do we find this? If you'll notice, I stumbled a bit while reciting the shloka, and sometimes I do stumble while reciting the shlokas because I haven't memorized the whole Gita, but I stumbled with this one because it's very hard not to, because this one's actually an irregular verse. There's one extra syllable in here. If you count it, this is a syllabally irregular verse. Normally the verses have a set amount of syllables, but there is an extra syllable here, right? And so what is the point of the syllable? It is there to reflect Arjuna's amazement at what he has heard about the Supreme Lord. And also maybe his confusion, right? About now trying to reconcile all of these things, right? So here we find...
Prabhu, like in the previous chapter, like he starts referring to the Lord in the word like bhavan and like respectful tones.
Yeah.
Right. Like
and that's very difficult if it's your cousin brother who you've been wrestling with before, right? If it suddenly turns out to be like that, it's a little bit, you know what I mean? It's a little bit unsettling. And so therefore we can see Arjuna is he's a little bit thrown off, right? You can think about it. I remember I met one when I was in India a few years ago, maybe like 5, 6, oh, it would have been like, yeah, nearly 4 years ago, I was in India, and I was having the association of this Prabhupada disciple from New Vrindavan. And he was there throughout all of New Vrindavan's history. And he was telling me about how, because he left Krishna, well, he left ISKCON for a few years, and then he came back to Krishna consciousness, right? So he left, and in the time that he left somewhere around the late 90s. This was the time where Srila Radhanath Maharaj really started to become a very prominent devotee. So back when he knew Radhanath Maharaj, he would tell me, he said, I used to chop wood with him, you know, we used to talk, we used to just have fun. And then he said, then I left ISKCON, I had some troubles. And now I've come back and I see Radhanath Maharaj, he's one of the most revered spiritual masters in ISKCON. He said it was such a weird feeling for him. He was shocked, right? To see the person that he had been doing service with, you know, they even had banter together. There were all sorts of things. And now he's there, you know, I mean, I don't need to explain the glories of Radhanath Maharaj to all of us here, right? We all know Radhanath Maharaj is such a elevated personality. And he said that was such a shock, right, to a system. And I was thinking, it's very much like this, right? He's feeling the very similar thing, having such a position revealed to him. It's a bit jarring, right? You're used to that old relationship. Of course, though, he said it's very sweet. Radhanath Maharaj still continued treating him the same way. So they still have this very sweet sort of friendship mood. It's not a lower and higher one. But yeah. Anyway, so we find this Arjuna, he's a little bit thrown off by this, right? Which is interesting because we don't always find that devotees are thrown off, right? We'll find another scenario like this in Vraj Leela, right? In Vraj Leela, we find that Krishna sometimes he's eating dirt, right? And eating dirt, he's consuming it, and all of his friends they're running around and they're telling Mother Jashoda, they're saying Krishna's eating dirt, and Mother Jashoda doesn't believe them. Actually, our acharyas describe. Mother Jashoda doesn't believe them because actually in the spiritual world, all of Krishna's friends are always lying about him, trying to get him in trouble, right? So they're always making up stories, things that Krishna's never done. They just make it up. And they hope that they can get him in trouble from Mother Jashoda. So Mother Jashoda just thinks, oh, they're just boys. They're trying to get Krishna in trouble again. They just find it funny, right? But then Balaram comes. And Balaram, he says, oh, Mother Jashoda. Krishna, he's eating dirt. And Mother Jashoda, she thinks, actually, all of the children, they will lie. But Balaram never lies about Krishna, right? Balaram, he always says everything out of his older brother affection. He's always looking out for Krishna. So if Balaram says it must be true. Mother Jashoda, she becomes very, very upset. Not upset that Krishna is eating dirt, not upset that he's being naughty, but she's becoming upset. She's thinking, is my cooking not good enough that Krishna is eating dirt instead of my cooking? Have I not been giving the appropriate snacks to my sweet Krishna? Is my service this terrible to Krishna that Krishna would rather eat dirt than the sweets and all the little snacks that I've made for him? What is going on here? I need to confirm whether this is true or not, right? So like this, she goes over to Krishna, right? Famous, right? As we know, the whole pastime goes on, and eventually, in order to prove that he hasn't eaten dirt, she gets him to open his mouth. And what does Mother Jashoda see inside Krishna's mouth? She sees all of the cosmos. She sees the entire cosmic manifestation. We hear in Bhagavatam, the 3 modes of material nature all manifesting. She sees all of them. She sees all of the planetary systems. All of them. Yes, inside his stomach. Yes, you're correct, Śrikānta Sena Prabhu, right? She sees through his throat into his stomach. All of the planetary systems, our acharyas, they describe, she sees she doesn't see the 3 modes in the sense that she sees all material nature, but she sees the 3 modes personified interacting in all of reality. She sees all of these things. In fact, she sees herself. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is very careful to specify. When she sees herself, she's not seeing a copy of herself. She's not seeing some alternate version of herself. She's quite literally seeing the back of her own head, right? And so seeing all of these things, she becomes totally shocked, right? And she begins to become shocked like Arjuna is shocked, right? Like Arjuna is wavering here. And what does she begin to think? She thinks, oh, what is the nature of this transcendental world? What is the nature of this material world, right? Transcendence is so much greater than this material world. What am I doing engaged in family life? I should renounce this world and take sannyas. These are the thoughts that are going through her head. I should renounce the temporary nature of this world. I will engage in saffron. I will travel this world, right? This is what I will do, right? At no point does she actually think Krishna is not God. She just thinks she's had some wonderful vision, right? And so she's thinking all of these things. But while thinking them, Krishna, he begins to panic. And he thinks, wait a second, if Mother Jashoda renounces the world, who will feed me? Who will tuck me in at night? Who will do all of these things? And so Krishna, he unleashes his yogamaya potency and completely bewilders Mother Jashoda. And so Mother Jashoda sees Krishna, and simply naturally, she takes the complete absolute truth of all, in which all yogis are aspiring to understand just one fraction of. She takes him onto her lap and she begins to feed him, right? So this is the nature of how the highest devotees respond. When they see these sort of things, it doesn't even bother them, right? We know the gopis, right? Krishna, at one point, he runs away, right? And the gopis, they all start running after him, running around. And at one point, they see Krishna, he thinks they're about to catch me, right? And so he manifests his four-armed form, right? His Narayan form. And the gopis, they see him. And what is their response? What is their response to Krishna? What is their response to Narayan? They say, oh, Narayan, do you know where Krishna has gone? Do you know where he's run away? We're trying to find him. We can't find him. Where is he gone, right? And then, of course, Srimati Radharani comes. And this is the power, right? Again, of that more intimate love. Srimati Radharani sees Krishna and the Narayan form isn't able to continue to be manifest. Krishna takes on his regular form. So far from the opposite, what happens to Arjuna? When Arjuna sees this form, he wavers, he becomes uncomfortable, he becomes disturbed, right? But when Srimati Radharani sees this form can't even last, right? I mean, forget about the universal form. That's the Narayan form, which is even higher than the universal form. But this opulent form can't even last. The love of the intimate devotees conquers even those forms. Even those forms are made temporary by their love, right? So we find that there are gradations of love. Anyway, so Arjuna, he's seeing this and he's wavered, right? He is not at this moment, he is not experiencing Vraj Bhakti. Vraj Bhakti conquers these things, but Arjuna's love does not. And therefore, he is a little bit confused, right? Of course, he's not bewildered, but he's just a little bit uncertain about the truth he's understood. Okay, there's a Narayan, the resting place for all living entities. Well, do you want to elaborate on that point? I can sort of see what you're making, but not fully.
Yeah, like the meaning of the word Narayan is a Ayana means the resting place.
Yeah.
And Nara is like the whole creation. And the resting, he's so essentially Narayan is the resting place for the whole of creation, but still Radharani is able to conquer that.
Jai. And the same point is made by Sanatana Goswami in his commentary on Damodarashtakam. He speaks about how Mother Jashoda has taken the belly of Gopal, right? And she has tied it, therefore she has conquered it. But that belly of Gopal, what is it? It is the stomach, right? It's the navel from which all the universes come out of each Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, right? Each universe is coming out of the navel of Vishnu, right? But all of those Vishnus are coming from the navel of Krishna, right? So Mother Jashoda, by tying that navel up, she has conquered the source of all of those universes. And therefore, all universes are conquered by the simple Mother Jashoda tying up her sweet, naughty child. So yeah, you find this coming up often in Raj Leela. Yeah, too much fun. Raj pastimes, yeah, nothing beats them. Okay, so back on track. Talking about Bhagavad-gītā, Kurukshetra Leela. So we find this, right? So Arjuna now, he's beginning to feel a little bit thrown. And so he wants to understand a little bit deeper this form, right? Because, well, at this point, really, if anyone is in doubt that Krishna is anything less than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you just be foolish, right? At this point, it's been so clearly demonstrated Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, right? Arjuna's chariot driver is something very special, right? So now Arjuna wants to understand more about this, right? He's a little bit curious about this. And we'll understand what is the position of Arjuna, this great devotee. We'll understand that the more and more he understands about the opulence of the Lord, we'll understand that even though, again, he's not in that Vraj mood where he's not completely disturbed, he thinks, I don't want to hear any of this, right? This is the glories of Arjuna, that he stops wanting to hear the opulences of the Lord, right? He just wants to hear sweetness at one point. Okay, text number 2. Let's have Katyayani Mataji say the English. Bhavapyayao hi bhutanam shrutta vistarasho maya tvatta kamala patraksha mahatmyam apicha vyayam.
Translation. O lotus-eyed one, I have heard from you in detail about the appearance and disappearance of every living entity and have realized your inexhaustible glories. Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai. So here we hear he's talking again that the Krishna's glories, they are impossible to exhaust, right? They are infinite, right? Krishna's eyes, they are said to resemble the petals of a lotus, right? So are Srimati Radharani's. It's described actually, the Srimati Radharani's eyes are described as being lotus petals. Why? Because lotus petals are very soft, right? And so the softness of the lotus petal reflects the mercy that's in her eyes, right? And so because there is that softness, therefore she is very soft and tender-hearted. But furthermore, lotus petals are a little bit red on the sides, right? They're a little bit red on the edges. And why are they a little red on the edges? Srimati Radharani's eyes are always a little bit red on the edges because she's always angry with Krishna, who's always just being a real rascal to her. So we find here, the lotus eyes is a recurring motif. Yes, actually, where is Srinivas Prabhu's health getting better, Mataji?
Yeah, he's okay, Prabhu, but he had his COVID vaccine last night.
Oh, yeah.
And he developed headache and fever today. So
yeah,
he's taking.
It's an austerity, the vaccine.
Yes, Prabhu.
Jai. Yeah,
Sorry
no.
for that.
It took me out of action as well. I can completely understand. Okay. So we look forward to seeing him next week.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
But yeah, so we find the lotus petals are often used, right, as a motif. Srimati Radharani is considered to have the most lotus petal-like eyes, but Krishna also, he has them. Yeah. So, and why is this being referenced to now? Because Krishna, he's feeling immense affection. He has been able to share the most confidential knowledge of bhakti, of love, of devotion to Arjuna. And because he's been able to do so, he is expressing the affection in his eyes. He has been able to grow very intimate to Arjuna by revealing the fullness of himself to Arjuna. The more you reveal about yourself, the more intimate you become with someone, right? It's a bonding experience to open up about yourself. And so Krishna, he has opened up about himself. And so the lotus eyes, they're reflecting that he is experiencing. We're not hearing about Janardhan, right? We're not hearing about the killer of all living entities at this point, right? We're hearing about the lotus-eyed Lord. Okay, then next text, we can have, I think Rohan Prabhu can go again after I say the Sanskrit. Evam etad yathatha tvam atmanam parameshwara drashtum ichchami te rupam aishwaram purushottama.
O greatest of all personalities, O supreme form, though I see you here before me in your actual position, as you have described yourself, I wish to see how you have entered into this cosmic manifestation. I want to see that form of yours.
Jai. So this is the point. Now Arjuna, he is expressing this. He is expressing this desire for him to expand on the last text of the 10th chapter. Actually, I should have mentioned this earlier. I always like to discuss how the chapters interact with each other. This whole chapter is elaborating upon, but what need is there, O Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. This point here, Arjuna is saying, I want to understand this further. I want to understand this deeper. Oh, there's a bit of flourish in a lot of the translations. So in case no one saw Śrikānta Sena Prabhu's question, this is why Prabhupada gave the word for word, so that in his translation, he can really just give the mood of the text. You'll often find Prabhupada goes really, he pulls out a lot of implications that aren't literally there in the words, but they're implied in the words in a lot of his translations. That's why, again, he gives word for word. You'll see this debate comes up often in terms of translation. There's two types of translation. There's formal translations and there's dynamic translations. Dynamic translations are trying to convey the thought and the mood of the original text. And formal translations are trying to convey the words individually. Both have strengths and weaknesses, right? Prabhupada has just given us both. He's given us the most formal type of translation, which is in the word for word, where it's each word. This is what this word means, this word means, this word means. You can't get more formal than that. And in the translation, he's given a very dynamic translation. So by giving both, we've got the strengths of both and the weaknesses of none. So yes, sometimes in order to pull out the meaning, like in Srimad Bhagavatam, in one of Prahlad Maharaj's teachings, he starts speaking about cinema songs, which definitely went there in Satya Yuga, right? But Prabhupada he's pulling out some implication of what's being said. He's trying to convey the mood of what Prahlad Maharaj has said. But Srila Prabhupada is not saying that there's a Sanskrit word for cinema songs there. Again, this is the value of the word for word. Okay, so at this point, yeah, Arjuna wants to hear an elaboration of that point. And therefore, what is he calling him? Now he's calling him Purushottama, Parameshwara, right? All of these things he wants to know. He wants to understand the nature. And it's not that he doubts it. It's not that he thinks it's not true and he wants it to be confirmed, right? It's more so that that he wants to confirm it to A, everyone else, and B, he's being prompted to by Krishna, who wants him to have this form manifested, right? It's not, how do I put it? It's not so much that he doubts it exists, it's that he still wants to see it nevertheless. He's curious about something which he knows is true. That's how I want to phrase it. So in this nature, Arjuna, he's revving up to ask to have the full darshan. And then, therefore, we come to the next text. Let's have Sri Mataji say the English. Manyase yadi tachchakyam maya drashtum iti prabho yogeshvara tato me tvam darshayatmanam avyayam.
If you think that I am able to behold your cosmic form, O my Lord, O Master of all mystic power, then kindly show me that unlimited universal self.
Jai, Jai. Right, so there he indicates, he says, if it is possible, right? If you think it is feasible, then let me see, right? Of course, the reason why he asked this is because he is about to get special eyes in order to see this universal form. Okay. He also calls Krishna Yogeshvara, right? Master of all mystic power. So this is referring to the fact that Krishna, he has access to all of these various things. We can see this, for example, in Govardhan Lila, right? The mystic, you require a lot of mystic potency in order to lift up a mountain, right? And therefore Krishna is the greatest of the mystics. Actually, in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Chirharan pastime where Krishna steals the clothes of the gopis at the end, they call him Yogeshwareshwara. Why? Because Krishna, just in case anyone were to think Yogeshwara is the title of Shiva, right? And therefore Krishna and Shiva are on the same level. They make this point, no, you are Yogeshwareshwar, you are the Lord of Yoga, right? So like this we hear. So if you have the capacity, if you have the power in order to give this, then please let me see it. And what does Krishna say in response? Let's hear from Visakha Mataji. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashya me Partharupani Shatashotha Sahasrashaha Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varka Kritini Cha. Yeah.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, O son of Pritha, see now my opulences, hundreds of thousands of very divine and multicolored forms."
Jai. So Krishna now, he's saying, behold this form, right? You can look, you can see it now. He's saying it is possible for it to be seen, so on and so forth. And as we hear, There's a lot of diversity and a lot of beauty in it. Text number 6. Let's have Divyansh Prabhu again. Pashya dityan vasun rudran ashvinau marutasthatha bahunya drishta purvani pasyacharyani bharataha.
Hare Krishna. All best of Bharatas, see here the different manifestations of Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Ashwini Kumaras, and all the other demigods. Behold the many wonderful things which no one has ever seen or heard of before. Thank you.
Jai. So here, this is what Krishna is meaning by seeing hundreds and thousands of forms. He's referring to various demigods, various beings. Again, this is not hundreds and thousands of forms, as in all the forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a material form. And therefore, he mentions demigod names, because demigods are material, right? As has already been established in the Bhagavad-gītā. The heavenly planets, they come, and the heavenly planets, they go, right? And so therefore, by mentioning these demigods, Krishna is emphasizing this is a temporary form. Does that make sense? So we are not seeing an eternal form, we are seeing a form, and therefore when we're seeing hundreds and thousands of different forms, we're seeing all the different demigods maintaining the universe. Okay, and then text 7, maybe we can have Sevamrita Mataji. Ihaiki stham jagat kritsnam pasyadyasa characharam mamma dehe gurakesha yachchanya drashtumichasi.
O Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. This universal form can show you whatever you now desire to see and whatever you may want to see in the future. Everything moving and non-moving is here completely in one place.
Jai. Thank you. So here we hear that we hear the final real description before we hear the nature of which one can perceive this, right? And what is that nature? We'll hear about it in text 8. Maybe we can have Varun Prabhu can say the English for this one. Natu mam sat shakyase drashtum anne naiva svachakshusha divyam dadami te kshashu pashya me yogamaishwaram. Varun Prabhu. Varun Prabhu is gone AWOL. Let's have okay.
But you cannot see me with your present eyes. Therefore, I give you divine eyes. Behold my mystic opulence.
Yeah. So what we hear here is that there's divyam chakshush, right? Transcendental eyes are required to see it, right? Now, there is a question that arises here before we dive into our description of the universal form, which will be our activity to conclude today. So what is can anyone think, what would the contradiction here be? What would be the issue? What would be the dilemma? Can anyone think? What would be the issue with Krishna having to grant Arjuna special eyes?
Because the eyes to see a lower form, quote unquote, should not need divine qualifications as opposed to seeing his present form, which you can already see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly, right? So this is a little confusing because Arjuna is seeing Krishna in front of him, the two-armed form of Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan. Why does he need special eyes? In order to see the material form, the universal form, a respectable form, but an impermanent form, which Srila Prabhupada has already mentioned we're not even bothered with as devotees, really, right? It pops up really for us to either preach to others or for us to understand the supreme position of the Shamsundar two-armed tree-bended form, right? Yeah, Arjuna already has transcendental eyes. So we can understand here, there's a few ways to understand it. A few ways that are given. The way that I prefer to say it is that Divyam here refers to the demigods, the devas, right? Deva means that which is, div, right? It all has its roots there. So he's seeing, so in order to see the demigods, I mean, in order to see the universal form, he needs to get vision like the demigods do. In a sense, his vision is being downgraded because as a devotee, he isn't concerned with the universal form. And so he's given the vision of the demigods both to perceive it, but also so that he can actually be interested in it. However, it is made clear that at no point is Arjuna thinking, oh, I would rather see this. And that's what we'll hear at the end. At the end, he says, okay, I don't want to see this anymore. Cool, right? His heart never changes. He's still a bhakta. But in order to be able to perceive it, he needs the eyes of a person who is concerned with these things. And therefore, he receives the eyes of a demigod, right? Yeah. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very sweet analogy. And that's what I'm just pulling out here in my notes. A tongue tasting crystal sugar cannot simultaneously experience the taste of unrefined gur or sugar cane, right? So if one is tasting again the higher taste, one is not too concerned and one cannot experience a lower thing. Or you can think about it this way, right? If you have something very, very sweet, if you have something very sweet and then you have a lesser sweet, it doesn't taste sweet at all, right? You can't even perceive the sweetness. It's the same with the experience. If you're having the full experience of divinity, how are you even going to notice a much lesser expression of it? Would the granting of divine vision also be considered the lifting of the veil of yogamaya? Do you have any commentaries that back that up? Because I would want to say no, but sometimes the acharyas
speculation.
Yeah, sometimes the acharyas pull the rug out of under your feet and they'll say something like that. At least insofar as I understand, that wouldn't be the case because Arjuna's yogamaya is that he was bewildered into not wanting to fight. That's the only influence of yogamaya on him. If anything, this would be the yogamaya being placed onto him.
Isn't the yogamaya that he considered Krishna his cousin?
No, that's his bhakti. I mean, yeah. In one sense, it's his yogamaya, yeah. But it wouldn't be considered so because yogamaya is when there's illusion in order to increase. It is illusion for pastime's sake. In order for him to change to a lower thing, that wouldn't happen unless there's some sort of illusion. I don't think yogamaya is acting on him because at the end he rejects seeing this form, right? At the most, you could say yogamaya created in him the desire to see this form, but it wouldn't be yogamaya being pulled away because when yogamaya is being pulled away, you're seeing something more truly. Whereas Arjuna is already perceiving something more true than the universal form, which is a temporary form, right? Arjuna is perceiving an eternal form, not a temporary one. So for him to see that would be an act of illusionment rather than a movement away from it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if anything, it would be more yogamaya, not less. But I'm not sure where. I know Purna Chandra Goswami. He teaches, and I think he even writes in Gītāmrita, which, as a side note, is a fantastic resource. If any of you want to revise any of the chapters of the Gita, but don't have time to go through the purports, Gītāmrita is what he does is he rewrote the Bhagavad-gītā, but incorporated main points from the purports in what Krishna is saying. So it's like each text is like 3 times the length, but it gives you a real just feel of the flow of the Gita. If you just want to like revise on the flow, if any of you want, I have the audiobook. I can send it into the WhatsApp group. You can even listen to it just to like internalize as you're driving or washing the dishes or whatever. Anyways, but Purna Chandra Goswami, he either as in Gītāmrita or he says in one of his classes, he indicates that yogamaya plants the desire in Arjuna's heart to see this form. Like the very desire itself is born from yogamaya. But yeah, so he's receiving these special eyes. Yep, which is mentioned by all of our acharyas in their commentaries. Okay, now text number 9 begins our description, and then we'll have our activity, and then we'll wrap up for today. Maybe we can have, trying to think, whoever. Katyayani Mataji, have I asked you twice?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, okay. Who have I not asked twice? Look, I'll have Mrugank Prabhu. I'm sure I haven't asked Mrugank Prabhu twice. You can say the English of text number 9. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva tato rajan mahayogeshwaro harihi darshayam asaparthaya paramam rupamaishwaram.
Sanjaya said, O king, having spoken thus, the supreme lord of all mystics, the personality of Godhead, displayed his universal form to Arjuna.
Yeah, Jai. So now we're hearing that the description of the universal form, right? Very, very famous. So with this one, I think we'll go to our activity. Today's ones will be a bit arts and craftsy. I hope you don't mind. I don't think we've done an arts and craftsy one in a while. So basically, what I'll do is I'll split you into 2 groups just because I feel like you guys get more comfortable when you're in groups. But I'm going to allocate a set of shlokas to each group, and I want you all to draw the details that are being described in there. So each one of you can be responsible for 1 shloka. I'll just quickly do the math of how many people are here and how many shlokas I can give. And then once you've drawn them, please send them into the WhatsApp group, and then we can collate them into a big drawing of the universal form at the end. So we'll probably do this activity again next week with the next batch of texts, and then we'll all have a collective drawing of the universal form put together. So yeah, so we'll do that. Let's see. Okay, Sevamrita Mataji will have to leave, so I won't counter in the numbers. I'll just do the math now quickly, and then we'll do that. I'll just quickly pause the recording. So yeah, I hate to be demanding, but please, yeah, please send the, please email it. Okay, I think on that note, we'll wrap up. Are there any questions? This section's pretty straightforward. That's why I gave you the open book questions now, because we've done the more complex learning already. I would say the rest of this module is easy. Okay then, Hare Krishna. All glories, assembled devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Okay, Hare Krishna. I'll see you all next week. Good luck handing in your assignments, and message me if there's any issue.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.